So we left off with how great, wool is, right? We left off talking about the greatness of wool products, which I can always talk about wool products because there's just so much good to them. So we talked about we left off talking about running through a room full of flames in a lanolized. Let's say we were wearing a bunch of wool stuff, and it was lanolized because lanolin is fireproof. So, and lanolin is a byproduct of sheep, and so is wool. So when you re-lanolize a wool product, it naturally just wants to go back into that wool because it came from there originally anyway. Okay, so it's just going home. Okay, so when you re-lanolize with 100% lanolin, I talked about that on this channel a few times. There's a video with me re-lanolizing some wool inserts for some flyers mitts on this channel right now. You can go watch that. I talk about it. Alright, so not only does lanolin make wool practically, for all intents and purposes, basically a fireproof garment in a practical sense. I'm not talking about as a firefighter or something. I'm talking about being around campfires and whatnot. You never have to worry about your wool around a campfire, especially if you have re-lanolized it. So the next thing is that the lanolin, after you've reintroduced it to your wool, makes it more water resistant. So instead of absorbing the water, okay, we say, oh, it's warm when wet. Well, if it's warmer when it's not wet, right? So if we re-lanolize our wool, and it's likely to not get as wet, then it's going to be even warmer, right? So if it doesn't absorb the water, it's hydrophobic, okay, sheds water, then that's even better. That's where that is where the legends came from of the fishermen being out on the high seas with their oiled wool clothing, right? Oiled wool. Sometimes they call lanolized wool oiled wool. Some places you could still buy oiled wool in Ireland and Scotland and places like that, right? They call it oiled. They used to call it also sheep's fat, but it's not fat at all. It's lanolin. Okay, so well, why do we have all of these wool garments that don't have any lanolin in them? Because they wash them, they scour them, they get all the wool from the sheep, and then they scour it using hot water and other processes, and they make it all nice and clean, but they never put lanolin back into it. So then it gets all nice and clean, and they can spin wool, and they make garments out of it, in some places, what do you call it? Merino is the one that so many companies use because it's softer and less itchy, right? This one's merino. Now, merino is my least favorite. My least favorite wool. Shetland wool is better. Shetland wool is better. It's rougher. It's thicker. The wool hairs are thicker, stronger. So they're more abrasive, but they keep you warmer and they last longer under rougher conditions, right? That's Shetland. And then you got another one. I can't remember I always have a problem remembering the name. You got another one there. Anyway, begins with a C, I think. I'd have to look it up. You know how I am anymore. So there's another one that's just as good as Shetland. Might even be hardier. You know, it's got a real thick hair to it. It's itchy, right? See, that's the thing. People say, "Oh, I'm allergic to wool." No. If wool makes you itch, and that's all it does, you're not allergic to it. It's scratchy. The heavier stuff is scratchy, right? That's just the way it is. Now, if you're truly allergic to wool, or you might be allergic to lanolin, wool or lanolin, you can find out real easy. You get a rash. If you get a rash from it touching you, then you're allergic. Your skin's allergic to it, right? But if it's just scratchy, you're not allergic, right? That's just a misconception that people have. Oh, I'm allergic to wool. I can't wear it. You know. Okay. So, what else? Well, wool is a natural regulator. It's a natural insulating. It's a regulator. So because sheep don't take their wool jackets off in the summer, okay. So it's an insulator for both heat and cold. All right. So in the industry of, I'm going to call it the industry, but you know, there are a lot of just normal people that practice beekeeping, okay? They have started building insulated hives. And then you get people to say, well, what are you going to do when summer comes around? Because they have it in their brain that you only need insulation in the winter. It's not true. Insulation keeps you, it creates a barrier between you and the outside. Okay? And if you have like a wool insulator, it will keep you cooler in the summer. Okay? And warm in the winter. Cool in the summer, warm in the winter. Right? So you want something that's thermally regulating, like wool. So, and that's a whole other subject you could just get into on your own, because we're not gonna dive down into that to it that deeply. Okay, as far as insulators in the summer and the winter, I've worn things in the heat of summer to protect myself from fierce heat. That's why you see the nomads in Africa totally covered up, cruising around on their camels and whatnot, totally covered, because it stops, it mitigates the loss of liquid from your body. Okay, it mitigates. So you're just slowing that evaporation down, right? That'll give you something to think about. Alright, so we talked about wool and lanolin, and we talked a little bit about fur, and let's talk about fur-bearing animals, right? So, the most insulating fur-bearing animal is the polar bear, okay? The second most insulating fur-bearing animals are the reindeer and the Arctic white fox. Those are the second most insulating, and those are still you can still have stuff made out of those because there's plenty of them. Reindeer is caribou. So they're the same thing basically, just different regions, right? In the North American continent, they call them caribou. Other places, the Sami and whatnot over there, you know, reindeer. Okay. No. How about things that are not Arctic critters? Well, down in New Zealand, they got the bushy-tailed possum, right? Not to be confused with the North American possum. They're totally different animals. They just call them the same thing. I don't know why. Not delving into that. So anyway, all of those animals, they have something in common. They have hollow fibered hair, right? So it traps heat. The thing about reindeer, though, is sometimes that hair can be brittle. So, you know, you want a really densely furred pelt if you're going to go that reindeer route. Now, when I was a kid, my dad gave me a real set of mucklucks. When I term real, I'm talking about made with real animal pelt, made out of reindeer, and they were really awesome. So my brother was extremely jealous because he was growing fast, and my dad wouldn't buy, he wouldn't buy him anything like clothing or footwear or anything that was really of any good quality or of any expense because he was growing so fast. So I got the reindeer mucklucks and he didn't. I think he got some pack boots. But anyway, we always had pack boots, more or less. Now, the Inuits, they made their mucklucks, and they made them from seal for the summer, right? Because, you know, they need to be a bit more waterproof, so they made them from seal. And then in the winter time, they needed more insulation. They made them from reindeer, right? That's their Inuit made mucklucks. Now, when we talk about expeditions like we did earlier, we want to look back to the South Pole. We got Roald Amundsen was the first to the South Pole. That's right. He was the first. He made it first. He gets the prize. I don't agree with that Amundsen Scott thing. Yeah, okay, Scott died. He didn't make it first. He was second, right? It is what it is. I'm not into that woke thing, you know. There is not a trophy for everybody. There's no participation trophies. You either made it first or you made it second. And Amundsen made it first. Norwegian guy got it. And I'm going to tell you why. Because he embraced all of the ways and means and all of he trained the same way as the Inuits, all of the Arctic people. He observed them, studied them, everything. He emulated all of their ways. That's why he made it to the South Pole first. Yep, you can look it up. He wore wool and furs. And he went and he came back alive. Yeah. Alright, leave it at that for now. Catch you later.